The relationship between sexual dissidents and different religions has historically been complex. In Uruguay, freedom of worship and the separation of the state and the Catholic Church were consolidated in 1918. However, some sectors of Catholicism, particularly, have been associated with violence and debates surrounding the rights of dissidents. Despite secularization, religions continued to play a significant role in the country's social and cultural life. While Catholicism has been the dominant religion, the presence of other faiths, such as Afro-Umbandists and various Christian movements, prevents us from speaking of a single attitude towards sexual diversity. The relationship between faith and sexual diversity ranged from rejection, silencing, and inclusion. In Uruguay, Afro-Brazilian religions, such as Umbandism in particular, stand out for their openness and inclusion of sexual diversity, not only offering an egalitarian space, but also recognizing the fundamental role that dissidents played in the expansion of these cults in the region. The history of Afro-Brazilian religion in Uruguay is linked to the work of two transvestites who introduced these practices from Brazil more than 70 years ago. Furthermore, Umbandism promotes equality, both within the religious hierarchy and in community life. This inclusive perspective and rejection of any form of discrimination transforms these religions into spaces of resistance to stigma and exclusion, in contrast to the condemnatory views of dissidents found in other cults. The historical and global institutional stance of the Catholic Church has been one of rejection of dissidents, and our country has been no exception. It is enough to review some statements by Daniel Sturla, the current Archbishop of Montevideo, and his predecessor, Nicolas Coutinho. In 2003, while Archbishop, Coutinho stated that homosexuality was a disease, and compared it to a contagious pathology, suggesting that it should be cured before those affected returned to the community. His statements generated widespread condemnation from diversity groups and political actors. In 2015, after a year in office, Sturla expressed concern about sex education in schools and about gender ideology, arguing that both promoted values contrary to Catholicism. These pronouncements helped confirm that the Catholic hierarchy in Uruguay maintains a conservative and exclusionary stance toward LGBT+ people. Unlike this prevailing view in the Catholic Church, other Christian movements have had more open attitudes toward dissidents. The Methodist Church, for example, has developed inclusive practices since the 1990s, opening its spaces for meetings of diverse social groups and organizing discussions on the topic. In 2022, this church began celebrating same-sex marriages, becoming the first Christian institution to officiate same-sex unions in Uruguay. Furthermore, the Methodist Church has promoted an alternative reading of sacred texts, emphasizing the message of love and justice over restrictive interpretations of sexuality. In 2018, a Methodist pastor questioned some of Sturla's statements, pointing out the risk of associating the natural with the moral. It is evident that the Christian position on sexual diversity remains far from univocal. However, there were and are sectors that do not preach moral panic and the repression of freedoms, building spaces of inclusion and respect. In a city like Montevideo, where secularism and freedom of worship are fundamental pillars of coexistence, it is crucial that religious spaces accept and reflect the diversity of society and contribute to building a more just and egalitarian social fabric.